All right, this is a pretty simple one. It happens a lot. What happens if I'm OCS?
Yeah.
Let's talk through the scenarios.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different scenarios. The shorter answer is do something quickly. The default is to stop and let people go by, but there could be a lot of different scenarios that work here. Okay,
so what about let's set up that let's just assume it's kind of a normal length line, and I'm let's sort of go the middle and to the ends. What are sort of the best exit strategies once you hear your OCS, or you're pretty confident that you're OCS?
Yeah, so you're going upwind, you've just been called OCS. If you're kind of looking for the cleanest path out, and often you got to find a low density area, because here's the problem is you're going off and you just everybody's going fast, they're close haul, and early in the race there's there hasn't been any time to spread out yet. So if you're OCS and you're trying to go back, you have no rights, right? You're coming downwind. By definition, you got to go downwind, and rules wise, you have everything against you. Going back in itself, there's no rule against that. So you're not giveaway boat because you're going back, but you are giveaway boat because everybody's on starboard, right? And even if you're on starboard, you're windward boat. And if you jibe over, you're on port. Either way, you don't have rights. So you got to find a low density spot. And so if you're starting near an end and you got to go back, the first low density spot is if you can find your way over here, you're free, right? Here's the pin. There's nobody coming up here, so you can get out of the way. Same with the boat end. If you can, the quicker you can kind of get here and around, maybe around the boat, and you can get out of there. So this is a low density spot too. And, if you're right at the boat, it's easy. But maybe you got to wait for one boat to go by, and then you quickly duck him, and you can cross the next one and you're free. The middle is tougher. You have to, you have to find some way back between the crowd, and it can be pretty hairy. So that's the beginning of everything.
All right, so let's talk about that space and time between the start and this uncertainty that you could be over early and maybe not. What should the reaction be of just do you sail a little slower, knowing that you're going to have to go back, or you just shoot and go fast and try to find some room to get back?
Yeah. So if I think are you saying in the scenario, like, how do you go back? Like at this point, like what are the options here?
How do I get back?
Yeah. How do you get back? That's the basics of it. So I think the problem is if you're over, you're not in a position, if this is if you're the red boat and you were over and yellow and blue and green, we're not, you got this problem that you're ahead of them. Right. And we just talked about the fact that when you try to go back, you don't have many rights. And so you have to find a way out. And my default here is to just plain stop. So as soon as I found out I'm OCS, they hail it on the radio, red, you're over early. First thing I do is my first thought is I have to stop and let these people go by. Because back to the thought that you need some low density. As soon as I do this, now it's, maybe there's a second row, but the second row is much more spread out. Maybe they're even tacking out by then. I gotta let this first row go, and then I can get out of here. And, whether that getting out of there is, hey, there's maybe there's a boat here and I can't bear off, and maybe it's best to tack and bear off, but inevitably, it's rare that I get the option. It's sort of not a realistic scenario that I can just bear off. If I'm OCS in this situation, I have a big enough gap to bear off. I probably didn't need to be over anyway. So the reason I'm over is I'm probably in some traffic. And so it's unusual if I just plain pull the trigger wrong and had a huge gap to leeward and just plain misjudge, maybe. But most of the time, that's not the case. Most of the time, stop the bleeding. Right? Let them go by, then deal with it. However, whatever situation arises after they go by. And if you stop, you're not getting further from the line. So if you sail another 4 boat lanes, that doubles, right? You got to go back. That's 8 extra boat lanes you have to sail.
Interesting. So this may be getting a little nuanced one level into it, but what is the best way to stop? I mean, you can kind of, is it good to sort of glide high and slow and stop so that you kind of create a little space to lure it? Or do you just literally just let the sails out? Would you back the sails to stop the boat and stop the bleeding up the ladder rungs? I mean, it's maybe what's some thoughts on stopping the boat?
Yeah, so
without
physically stopping the boat, I mean, the first thing to do is let out the sails, but you're going to have some momentum, especially a heavier boat, got a keel on it or something, it's going to move. But even a super light boat, it's going to keep going. I do a nice push out of the boom. If it's a single-handed boat or something, I can do that, or even a double or triple-handed boat where I can reach things. But if you have a team, that should be part of the routine. We have a word, it's stop, and we use it all the time before the start, and you can use it after as well. I do think, though, that you got to be a little careful that you don't actually back up, because when you're stopped, you still have some rights. You're on starboard tack, and unless somebody comes below you and heads you up, and you might have to fiddle a little, but generally you have rights. As soon as you start backing up, all bets are off. You don't have any rights in the rules.
Bummer. Okay, so
let me add one more thing to that.
Yeah,
sometimes I actually stop in a way that I think I might get clear quicker. So you said, hey, do I go super high, maybe go low? If I sort of think, hey, if I go really high here while I stop, this boat here has got a choice, and, they're going to go below me and I can tack out. Or maybe I want to go a little low, stopped, and make sure they go to windward of me so that when I finally get clear, I can bear off. So I am paying attention to what's going on that second row coming up, and trying to, the net effect is I want to, 1, stop the bleeding, but 2, find my quickest way out.
Is it much like when doing penalty turns? So obviously you're going upwind, a jibe get you downwind faster versus attack. Because that kind of go and set up, and you basically, ideally you want to jibe to get back to the line.
Yeah, or just bear off or whatever. Either way, you got to go downwind at some point. So however you get there is sort of the next step. And it's going to be different every single time, because you don't, who's coming towards you in that second row, or what gap might happen to appear, or who happens to tack out and leave you an opening. You're not going to know, and you're going to be willing to grab it right away. But first thing you got to do is start letting people go by and, push that boom out. Don't, kind of like as soon as you recognize it, don't hesitate, but you also can physically slow the boat down, not just let it glide to a stop.
Okay, sounds good. Now, what if I'm pretty confident I'm over early, or it might be pretty obvious I'm over early before the start? What's some thoughts there?
Yeah, so it could be, if you discover it soon enough, it could be a very different scenario. So the problem you have here is if you find out after the start, you're probably poked out a little bit, right? And you just can't tack and cross these people. You can't bear off and cross them. But suppose instead it's just like, you just have this terrible situation. There's 20 seconds to go. You're almost to the line already. This is going to end badly. And, then everybody's going really slow, and including you. And so you have 2 options. You can kind of stop, but stopping, all they do is kind of catch up to you. And then when they pull in, they get some momentum and you're screwed. So one of the great things about finding out early enough is you can just sheet in and go fast. And then you can kind of look for some way back from in front of the fleet. A little scary. They're all on starboard, but they're going slow. So then you have the option to bob and weave. And if you're, suppose you're up here and you're like, oh, there's a spot, boom. And you might even be able to just reset up, But if you find it out soon enough, you can do that.
And maybe you speak a little bit about sort of the it's that mental thing. It's almost like we with the lure marksman talk about just getting over the emotion part of it and just sort of not waiting to do something about it. I mean, what?
Absolutely. I find this all the time. In fact, we had a practice here the other day, and it was real starts, but it was just a bunch of starts. And we're doing these 9-minute rolling, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, and the third one's a go. So we get two practice starts and a real start. And so we get to play with each other. It's kind of fun. And, some of the less experienced people, I'll pick on them a little bit, and I'll just go and get them in a really bad spot. And then I'll wait like 5 seconds. I said, so what are you going to do about it? And it's very natural for them. They know instantly they're in a bad spot, but they freeze and they're like, maybe this will work out. And it never does, right? Like, so I think over experience and just getting over that mental block that you just, even though it's not ideal, there may be no good way out of this. You're immediately looking for the least bad way out of it. And so the short answer is recognizing right away, and whatever you are, start to fix it as soon as you find out is better than waiting to see it pan out the way it's going to pan out anyway. So short answer is do something, right? Get the heck out of there, but get over that mental block that you can willpower your way out of this. Maybe I can outpoint them right off the line, even though they get a leap out on me. You can't.
Well, I like the idea of like, there's that moment of like, you're exposed, your bow's out, just screw it, sheet on, get upwind, get over the pin, or we'll get out and around the end and get safe.
Yeah. Well, in this scenario where you find out, you're here and you're pretty sure, there's 40 seconds left and you're here for 30 seconds, that's actually quite a bit of time. And if you even say, you think I can do something about it? By the time you even have that conversation in your head, the window's gone. So you got to just go.
All right. So when it's time to just go and you're kind of wedged in and you got boats around you, is it okay to maybe talk to the guy to lure you, again, say, okay, well, I got to get out of here. Hey, let me just get across you. Is it okay to kind of talk to your competitors to help you get out yourself, but also open up the starting line for them so they can have a better start?
Absolutely. And I think the way to think about that and really make it clear that it's okay is put yourself in the other shoes. Suppose you're this boat, right? And you've gotten this boat in just a bad spot. Well, them being over is going to kill you, right? Like, you don't want them there either. And they're all of a sudden looking for a way out. And they're like, I really want to get out of here. And I'll say to them, go bear off below me, just go. So instead of forcing them to go all the way up here, and then maybe they're still in my way and forcing, giving me a bad start by the time they go, they're still trying to get out of there. I'm like, I'll stop and let you go. I'll say, just go away, and by the time they bear off to go over you, for example, it's not like they can just stop here. Right? Like, now they're moving, they have momentum, they're going away, and maybe they can even get out of there and find maybe they're down here by the time they reset up. But, and I might even say, hey, I'll let you go in front of me, but just get out of my air, right? Like, I'll trade you. I don't want you to go here. So just don't leave out me. And they're like, okay, thank you. And so if you put it in terms of what you would want, you can ask the same. And I think it's totally legitimate to say, hey, I just let me out of here. I promise I won't leave out. I won't take your wind. And they'll be, hopefully they'll say, thank you, just go, get out of here. So I think a conversation is more than appropriate. Just like overlap at a lure mark or something. The more you communicate, better.
Get everybody off on a clean race, clean start.
Yeah.
I think in the same, we also true anybody trying to bail out towards the boat end, tacking over to port to maybe get around the front is just, it's not the time to start yelling at them starboard. Just let them get across and sail straight. That's
a great point. Like, suppose like this guy is, isn't a great out, or this guy is just no matter what I say to them, they're like, lower, they're just they don't see the forest for the trees. They don't see that, hey, they'd have a better start if I got out of there. They just want to prove that they can assert their rights, or just emotion took over. I might turn to the next guy and say, I'm going to be OCS. Do you mind if I tack and cross you? What more would you want if you're yellow than for this guy not to have you in a safe leeward at the start and OCS? So now you're stopping, getting away. And this guy might be like, go for it. And and I'll tack, they'll bear off duck me, and I'm out of there. So yeah, there's also the option to tack out of there. But either way, if you don't talk to the person, you're gonna foul them.
Yeah. Gigantic big lane just opened up for you, so let them go. Yeah.
Exactly.
Go fast.
Yeah,
right. So
that's perfect, right? If I get out of here now, yellow's got a great lane.
Yeah.
That was their problem. If I ask if I can go away, they're, unless they're just emotionally sucked into their spot, they're going to say, yeah. I also think that the earlier you do this, it gives them time to digest it. A lot of times if you ask right away, they're like, they freeze. They haven't really thought that scenario through. So if you do it with 10 seconds to go, they're just it's too late for them to process it and make it happen.
Yeah. They're
talking early.
Yeah. They're focused on cheating and get a good start and not a good time to get in their head. So yeah.
Right.
All right. So I guess the final part of this going back is just knowing when you've actually cleared yourself. I know we've got flags on the race committee boats and other visuals, but what are your sort of tips to make sure that you're all clean and ready to go on your restart?
Yeah, hopefully, if you're the only one, the X flag will come down in theory. It's supposed to. But it's a little unsure because maybe there's 3 of you over, and the other 2 haven't come back, and it won't come down. So I think a lot of it's the same things you use up to get the start. Hopefully, you've gotten a good line sight. So that's my go-to. I always work hard on the line sight to know where the line is, and then when I'm going back, I use that same line sight to make sure I'm clear. Short of that, you sort of have to judge it. You got to look back and forth and sort of like, am I there? And I think we're pretty bad at that. I don't think the humans set up to do that. It's hard to look. And then the final one is if I'm anywhere near end, a lot of times I just kind of just beeline it to the pin, round a leg, a leeward mark, and then I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then you kind of miss that indecision and maybe being too safe. And if you go 3 boat lanes below, so you're sure, that's 3 boat lanes back. So that's 6 boat lanes. So might be worth heading to an end.
All right, cool. And then at some point, I guess we'll get to using your GPS starting boxes to actually press the button and know when you're back. But I guess that's probably another time.
Yeah, right. If you have the machine, then that actually opens up the door, and you're pretty sure. And unless the reason you're OCS is your machine gave you bad info, and then you've kind of like, the machine said I was fine and they called me OCS, and you've just lost trust in your machine. That happens, some GPS drift, or maybe something else happens. So. All
right. Well, cool. So hey, if you don't mind, sum it up for those of us who tend to be LCS. What are the sort of what are the 5 takeaways?
Yeah. So if I was going to have the top 5 tips, I think the very first thing is recognize you're in trouble as soon as possible. So if you catch it early because you might be, or if you're like, ooh, that was close, have somebody on the radio and you're sort of already thinking about your out, so that when they call you OCS, you can react right away. And then second thing, or number 4, would be stop the bleeding. So if in doubt, just as soon as you recognize your OCS, the default is to stop the boat. Don't keep sailing upwind. Let people go by. It's really tempting to kind of hang on. Maybe I can cross this guy if I go a little further, and before you know, you've gone 5 more boat lanes. And then the third one, be really open and agile in your recovery. Like, really look around there. Every scenario is going to be different. People are tacking out to clear their lane if they're second row. So things are going to change super fast. So your job is to find the first path back. First way you can get that boat going again. Salmon swimming upstream here. You got to find your path through. The next one is it's okay to communicate with folks around you. Like, hey, dude, I'm in trouble here. I'm out. Or the other way around, like, dude, you're in trouble anyway. I'll let you go. Just bear off and get away. And finally, my top tip of all this is do something. Like the freezing because you were called OCS, or just as soon as you realize you're in trouble, do something. Don't hope that it's going to clear up on you or not get worse, because it is. No matter what happens, it's not going to get better. So you might as well proactively take the next worst thing instead of waiting for that to be dictated for you.
Hope is not the strategy.
That's
somebody said that somewhere. And also, I probably add as well as with keelboats, particular different single handers, but just once you do clear out and restart, of just letting it go and just putting it in the past, getting everybody on the boat back into the race.
Well, yeah, the mental game is huge. And no matter what goes wrong on the race course, it sort of doesn't matter how you got there. It's what you do from here. We always, it's probably a whole nother, one of these Zoom things here, but, how to mentally recover from errors is just a huge thing. And, I think it starts with expecting mistakes, right? You're going to be OCS every once in a while. You're going to get in a bad situation. It doesn't even have to be your fault, but, keeping a clear head and rationally getting out of it. No blame, nothing like that. Let's just fix it from here is so key.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate the insight as always, Mike. Enjoy your Florida warmth, and hope you get some foiling in today.
This afternoon looks like a good day.
All right. Excellent. All right. Rip away. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, Dave.